Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. It's good to be with you. Thanks for joining us. Judge Amy Coney Barrett returned to Capitol Hill Tuesday to answer questions from members of the Senate Judiciary Committee as her Supreme Court confirmation hearing continues. Barrett was pressed on how she would rule on a variety of issues she is likely to face if confirmed, including challenges to the Affordable Care Act, Roe v. Wade, and a possible challenge to the upcoming election. She repeatedly told senators she could not discuss potential cases. On the topic of abortion rights, Barrett insisted that she did not make any deals with the president or the White House over how she might rule. She also refused to commit to recuse herself on any election-related cases. But Barrett did say she would not be used as a pawn by President Trump to decide the election in his favor. Nancy Cordes is on Capitol Hill with the latest.
Senators scanned Barrett's background today for clues about how she would rule.
People say that you're a female Scalia. What would you say?
Barrett clerked for the conservative giant in 1998.
Justice Scalia was obviously a mentor, but I want to be careful to say that if I'm confirmed, you would not be getting Justice Scalia, you would be getting Justice Barrett.
On many issues, though, she declined to share her views.
It's not something really that's appropriate for me to comment on. I've never expressed a view on it. I can't answer questions like that.
The 48-year-old mother of 7 said she was just following an example set by the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
A judge sworn to decide impartially can offer no forecasts, no hints.
But Ginsburg did state her support for abortion rights back then, while Barrett refused today to discuss her personal opposition to Roe v. Wade.
Whether I say I love it or I hate it, it signals to litigants that I might tilt one way or another in a pending case.
On something that is really a major cause with major effect on over half of the population of this country who are women, it's distressing not to get a straight answer.
Can you set aside whatever Catholic beliefs you have regarding any issue before you?
I can. I have done that in my time on the Seventh Circuit.
As expected, Democrats pressed her on Obamacare.
I'm not hostile to the ACA.
President Trump has explicitly said he is choosing justices who will overturn the law.
I have had no conversation with the president or any of his staff on how I might rule in that case.
She would not say if she agreed with the court's 2015 decision guaranteeing the right to same-sex marriage.
I do want to be clear that I have never discriminated on the basis of sexual preference and would not ever discriminate on the basis of sexual preference.
Democrats called that term, sexual preference, outdated and offensive because it implies that sexual orientation is a choice. Judge Coney Barrett later apologized, saying she didn't mean to offend anyone. Elaine?
Nancy Cordes, thank you. For more, I want to bring in Siobhan Hughes and Rebecca Roiphe. Siobhan is a Capitol Hill reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and Rebecca is a CBS News legal contributor. Welcome. It's good to have you both. Siobhan, let me start with you. Lawmakers are seeking answers from Judge Barrett about recusal, especially when it comes to the Affordable Care Act and the 2020 election. Why is this an issue, and how has she responded?
The Affordable Care Act is an issue because that is exactly the subject that is before the Supreme Court a week after the elections. And should Judge Barrett be confirmed, she would be sitting to hear that case and be deciding on that case. Nominally, it challenges the constitutionality of the individual mandate, that requirement to hold insurance. But as a larger matter, the litigants are seeking to have the entire law thrown out. So that is the big one. On the election, that is an issue because Donald Trump has come very close to saying that he wants her on the Supreme Court to rule in his favor should the election be contested and that matter come before the Supreme Court. He has not said that explicitly, but he's walked so far up to the line that the message to a lot of Democrats is very clear. And so on both fronts, the judge took the position that she could not provide a clear-cut response as to how she would rule, given that it hypothetically could be before her. And should she tilt one way or another, she probably would be in the position of having to recuse herself.
Well, Rebecca, let's take a closer look at the case involving the Affordable Care Act. The Supreme Court will hear California versus Texas 1 week after the election. How does this case differ from other cases the court has heard on this issue?
You know, it's actually fairly dry legal issue. It's really about the severability of the individual mandate, which in plain English just means, can the rest of the law live if this one part dies as being unconstitutional? And so her comments, she's made comments in her writings about the Affordable Care Act and Justice Roberts' opinion on the Affordable Care Act. But this is actually, as she insisted, a very different issue and a quite dry issue that may, in fact, leave most of the Affordable Care Act intact.
Well, Judge Barrett was asked about her writings on the Affordable Care Act, including some that supported the dissent from late Justice Antonin Scalia and criticized the opinion from Chief Justice John Roberts. Siobhan, how did she respond?
So what's at issue is a statement she made in a law journal in which she said that the Chief Justice had pushed the Affordable Care Act beyond its plausible meaning in order to save the statute. And she at first didn't comment, but she was really pressed hard on that by Chris Coons. And eventually she said, you know, that's not really the issue. In that case, the issue was, can the penalty be construed as a tax and therefore legally constitutional, which is what Justice Roberts said. She said that's not the issue. The issue here is severability, as was previously mentioned, whether or not you can separate the mandate from the rest of the statute or not.
As a law that I interpreted.
Well, Rebecca, how is Judge Barrett differentiating between her academic writings and how she might rule if confirmed to the court? And what do you make of her explanation?
You know, well, she sort of explained when you're an academic, you can take a bird's eye view. You can look at things, you know, in perspective, and you can apply your, you know, policy and perspective to view what the best way to view this law is. And as a judge, you are limited not only by precedent and by the text and Constitution, but also by the case and controversy right before you. You cannot just make an opinion as broad as you would like it to be about this issue. You really have to narrow it down to what's before you. And so she did a very good job of explaining that. I thought that, you know, she's able to take a different view in her academic writing than she is able to do as a judge, and that she's in fact changed the way she's looked at the law since becoming a judge.
Well, Rebecca, Judge Barrett was also questioned about a possible challenge to the upcoming election. She worked with George W. Bush's legal team when the court called off the Florida recount, handing him the election in 2000. Justice Brett Kavanaugh and Chief Justice John Roberts also worked on behalf of the Bush team. Are there any parallels between that fight and what we could see this election year?
Well, there may be. I mean, we really don't know what the challenge, you know, what if there is a challenge, what that challenge might be. And it could be similar or it could be something different. I think that, you know, now it won't be certainly the hanging chads, because we have different problems now and different questions now about states and how states select electors. And any one of those issues could come before the Supreme Court. I think the question there is one that Democrats are lingering on, which is this concern that, you know, she may have some sort of allegiance to the president or, you know, in some way rule with that in mind. And I think that's their concern. And she keeps trying to insist, I can judge fairly. I will not be swayed by this. I am no one's pawn. You know, in these kinds of very fraught political issues, the court has in the past ruled along ideological lines. So I don't think it's, you know, really unfair for Democrats to question her on this. And of course, she's going to respond the way she does. But, you know, I think realistically to suggest that in these sorts of cases, one's ideology has nothing to do with the way one rules is just not believable.
Well, Siobhan, Barrett's confirmation is all but guaranteed. So what are lawmakers hoping to accomplish with some of these questions?
So this is not about changing minds on that committee, as you've said. Minds are made up. There are really two audiences and two issues that are being addressed right now. Number one is the near-term elections. For Republicans, especially people like Lindsey Graham, who are in very tight races and who need their conservative bases, the goal is to tell them that he is a staunch conservative by moving this particular judge. For Democrats, the case is the opposite. And while no one on that committee is in a particularly tough race, they can help their Democratic allies by doing things like appealing to the suburban women who were so essential in 2018 on issues like Roe versus Wade and abortion rights. Beyond that, though, there is a bigger game that's being played, and this gets to the issue of the credibility and legitimacy of this Supreme Court. Republicans, by holding these hearings and going through all the normal forms, are trying to show that this is a legitimate process that will produce a legitimate outcome and produce a legitimate justice on that court. For Democrats, you're already hearing Democrats saying that this is a sham process, and if this is a sham process, then that calls into question the justices on that court and the Supreme Court. And of course, it sets the stage for that bigger debate we could be having next year about whether there should be something like term limits on the Supreme Court, or even the possibility of adding seats to the Supreme Court. That is something that is certainly not off the table.
Well, Siobhan, I want to turn to the ongoing stimulus talks on Capitol Hill. President Trump is urging Congress to, quote, go big or go home on another coronavirus relief bill. Now, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has called the latest proposals by the White House one step forward and two steps back. So where do things currently stand?
Well, you saw Mitch McConnell take a somewhat middle approach today. He did not go big, as the president said, but he did say he wanted to try to put a narrower bill on the floor next week, something that would replenish that small business program, the Paycheck Protection Program, provide some money for schools, and produce something on liability reform. It's clear the Republicans are feeling some pressure, and they feel the need to do something before the election. It was only in his debate last night with Amy McGrath that Mitch McConnell did seem to be under some pressure over this issue. But at the same time, going big and providing those stimulus checks that the president would badly like to send out before the elections, Mitch McConnell did not leave that on the table. So at the end of the day, this country is still very much at an impasse over a new round of aid.
All right, Siobhan Hughes and Rebecca Roiphe, thanks to you both.